There's no Happy Halloween. Happy Halloween. That's what I wanted to say.
Don't slam the table. Didn't he just tell you?
He told me not to slam the table. Okay, all right. Thank you. I love. We asked Shai for big stadium applause, and we got it really big today. So thank you so much. Welcome. You have joined Distill It, a 360-degree view of life in sports. Phones, everybody, phones on mute.
Yes.
I love a rocky start to a show because that means it's going to go like it'd be a totally awesome show. I'm very excited about it. As I was saying, you have joined Distill It, a 360-degree view of life in sports. And my name is Wendy Rosenthal. I am your co-host alongside the brilliant, the amazing, the wonderful Ava Switzer. Put on your mask, my friend. It's Halloween.
I know, but you know me.
Oh, my gosh.
I didn't have time to wipe it down or anything. You know, I could be all sweaty from last time you used it.
Totally fine.
I've got hygiene issues.
It's been 2 years.
Right, even worse. Okay. I've got hygiene issues. I'm putting that on. Here.
You have joined us today on this beautiful Halloween afternoon.
Yeah.
You can see that at least I have dressed up as the queen that I like
I'm a
to believe I
Gemini.
am.
Here's my alter ego.
There
We're side by side.
There you go.
See?
You just keep it on your shoulder the whole time.
Like this.
We are the very fortunate co-hosts of this fantastic vidcast that looks at sports from all perspectives, trying to uncover the cool stories around sports from the home athletic lifestyle to professional sports. We believe we can do this because Ava and I are the very proud owners of a company called the Distillery Inc., where we distill professional athletes' unique athletic skill set and repurpose it into their lives after sports. We are huge sports fans. We love sports, and we also believe that sports is a metaphor for life. Yeah. And that's why we come to you every other Thursday from the beautiful studios of UBN Go. And we are joined today by our wonderful, fantastic engineer Shai, who is celebrating. He's celebrating.
Let's go Nats.
That's right. On the last show, I have to say there was some including me in our household that were rooting for the Astros, but there you go. Yeah. We're very happy. It was a great World Series, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But before we do, we want to first of all let you know that we enjoy hearing from you. Every single time we're in studio, you can get in touch with us either on Facebook in the comment section, where we will be very happy to respond, or you can call in at 323-524 2599.
Yes.
Sorry, I was like having a temporary momentary lapse.
323-524-2599.
So call in with your comments to join the conversation. And as we do every broadcast, we like to start out by talking a little bit about what's going on in the world of sports, and there's a lot going on. Before we get there, I just want to invite our in-studio guest today, who we're going to do a bigger introduction for in a bit, Cedrick Alexander. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Good morning, beautiful people. I guess it's afternoon.
And we want you to join us in this conversation if you like. If you don't have anything to say, it's okay as well. But we wanted to start off with talking about the World Series. There was, first of all, congratulations to the Washington Nationals. I have to tell you, I think it was one of those stories that they had to end with them winning, because of the whole season they were the underdog, they were behind, they had actually almost no business being even a wild card team. Sure. And what they did from the minute they stepped into the postseason until last night was truly phenomenal, I have to say, even though I'm not a supporter of the team. So I was... It was fun to watch, and even though in our household we have a lot of Texas roots, the Astros didn't win. I have to say I felt like it was one of the most fascinating series to watch, just by the mere fact that nobody won at home. Let's talk about that. Yeah. Nobody won at home. How does that happen?
I have no clue. It was heartbreaking, to have your team come back home and just lose so badly, but. For us, at least, I think the key was the pitcher game, because Max Scherzer was having some back spasms, and we had to wait on that. So just waiting on our pitchers to play them in games 6 and 7.
Yeah.
I think everyone was like, what are you doing? Why aren't we playing our best pitchers? And then we waited till that last moment when we really needed it.
Yeah, and it was interesting that a pitcher won the MVP award, which doesn't always happen,
Yeah.
especially when they had a lot of good hitting.
Oh, yeah.
I thought Rendon was going to take the MVP award, but he didn't.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about baseball, to be honest. This jersey I got from my bar that I used to work at. They took me to my. They took me to my.
I like that. That's honest.
there you go.
I
love
like
that.
the honesty.
They took me to my first baseball game. I won like employee of the month and the general manager. Shout out to A-Town, by the way.
I love
And and our bar organization is like really close with DC sports. Like
Yeah.
the Washington Capitals were at one of our bars last night celebrating for the Nats.
Yeah.
And they had like a makeshift championship trophy and
So
whatnot.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice.
So, but yeah, I don't know. It was amazing. I had a friend at the game last night. Shout out George. And
And you were here working,
I was here working,
Yeah.
stressing real hard.
missing the last 2 innings.
Yes.
The,
Yes.
the other thing I wanted to quickly comment on is, again, as we talk about that sports is a metaphor for life, there were so many things that happened across the World Series that really reflected that. Again, the injuries that some of the pitchers had to deal with and play through.
Sure.
The never give up, Houston's walking into the National Stadium down 2-0, and they did not give up. They did
Right.
not relent at all. Coming back to Houston, the Nationals had to literally fight to win. And also on a personal note, it was very interesting because I have family that lives in Houston, and my aunt is a very big baseball fan, and I was again supporting her than anything else. But it was really interesting to me because we talk, we're close relatively, but we have different lives. We live in different states, and we see each other maybe around holidays. But for this week, I mean, we were talking constantly on, via text.
Oh yeah, it brings you together.
It totally brings you
absolutely.
together.
Yeah.
And it just reminded me, it's like, I wish I talked to my aunt like this more often because she was so
Sure.
much fun. We were having such a good time. And at the end, I sent her a note saying, I'm really sorry that Houston lost. And she was like, okay, yes, I'm disappointed, but it is what it is. And I just thanked her. I said, but it's been really fun. Like,
Yeah.
I hope there's something else we can rally around.
Exactly.
So, again, I feel like sports always brings people, well, it could bring people closer or tear them apart,
Or tear
let's
them
be
apart.
honest.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because,
So we're going to focus on the happy times.
we're going to focus.
when it brings people together and they can be cordial.
And the other thing that we really wanted to talk about, because it's something that we have talked about on this show more than once, is the announcement this week that the NC2A made saying that they now will allow student athletes to earn money off of their likeness and their name and their likeness.
Yeah.
And we talked about this on a freestyle show maybe a month or a bit ago when California basically put in, it stated a new law that said that they were going to make that happen in California.
Yeah. We said, great.
We said,
The
great.
law's passed, but how exactly is that going to be executed?
Well, it was
And now
interesting.
they're working
Yeah.
on what that looks like.
And it's so interesting, too, because, I guess the NC2A has a board that comes together and talks about, like, these issues. And the board is made up, or that maybe they do special committees to
Yeah, the
talk
various
through these
divisions have to
things.
talk through it.
And they have various people who they are engaging in these boards. So it
Yeah.
goes from athlete up to, athletic director. And the overwhelming feedback was, it's time. It's time to do something,
Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, you understand that nothing's going to happen like for years.
It's not going to happen instantly. And like we've talked earlier, it's going to open up a whole other set of issues that I don't know people are entirely prepared to deal with just yet.
I think it's going to be fascinating to watch this process because, just one little tidbit that I'd heard about and read about was the fact that if a player is on scholarship and earns some kind of revenue off of their name likeness, that either they are going to have to somehow pay back, for lack of a better way of saying, the university, or they're going to have to claim their scholarship as a taxable income. Like that is the level of detail that everybody's going to have to start talking about. And that's
tough.
It's not an easy topic. And just that alone, can you imagine if you're an athlete and all of a sudden you're getting paid, but the government's now now you have to file taxes, which you probably never thought to do because you're not earning a living.
Exactly.
Right. Now you got to file taxes. Now you got to make sure your parents are filing. It's like it's going to have a ripple effect.
Sure.
That may be a positive one that has to happen.
Yeah, it may be worth
Yes.
it. It may be worth it.
But it's going to be years.
Yeah, it won't be easy.
But you think it's good?
I'm curious to see how that gets implemented, what that looks like exactly, what those boundaries are for the athletes. Because again, I think it's going to open up a whole other set of issues that people, that the athletes aren't yet prepared to deal with. I don't think everyone knows just what they don't know yet.
Right. Right.
So, but there has to be a change for sure, what that looks like and what it means and what the ripple effects are and how people will deal with those. We don't know just yet.
It's going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
I really do want to do a whole show on it where we find some expert that can come in and talk about it, because I think it's such a hot topic. Mm-hmm. It's so emotional.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so emotional.
Right.
All right.
We'll do it.
All right. Anybody else have anything they want to talk about? I got it off my chest.
Yeah. So do you feel good?
I feel good.
That's good.
Ready to move on?
I think that we have so much to talk about just through all of
right.
our Facebook comments.
Yes.
In
Oh,
anticipation of our show today, that we should get going and introducing our amazing guest.
So I've already introduced him a little bit, but I was so excited when Ava said that she and Cedrick connected, because of the fact that we've never really done a full show, first of all, on boxing, and boxing as not just
All
the
yours,
sport
all
itself.
I'm glad to be a part of that.
Yeah, not just the sport itself, but the health benefits, the mental benefits of boxing, it as a form of physical fitness.
Yeah.
But also, we couldn't let the moment go by,
Right.
having Cedrick in the studio without talking about boxing in general. So first of all, I would love for you to take a couple of minutes and just tell us who you are.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you guys for having me on the show. I really
We're
appreciate
excited.
you inviting me into your space and being the first to have this conversation. Bear with me as my voice is going, because LA is basically on fire.
Yeah, exactly. It is. LA's on fire, and we are
Basically
dealing
on
with smoke
fire.
everywhere, folks, so we
Yeah,
apologize.
Yes.
so we're going to do the best we can with what
Yeah.
we got. So I'm with you. Boxing is a science. It's a martial art, really. I think sometimes it gets reduced to this barbaric sport, but really there's a lot to be taken from it, even in just the small details and connecting your mind and body. That's what I like to teach a lot of my clients, is the understanding that when you're in a combat situation, it's not so much that you're trying to hurt somebody, it's more so just self-preservation.
Yeah.
Like, how do you stop the threat? In boxing, a lot of times you see a guy get stopped. Like, you don't say a guy get, there are knockouts and technical knockouts, but you want to stop the threat of being hurt, right? And so when you reduce it down to that, that's where you learn that, okay, there's a science, there's an art form. It's a martial art. I started out at karate. My parents put me in karate at a young age. Hated it.
Yeah.
Absolutely hated it. And it's funny now because I'm still in the martial arts, and it happens to be boxing.
Sure.
And we spoke a little bit earlier about you being in boxing longer than I have.
Yeah.
Now. It seems like
I have.
Well,
I have.
But
Seems like
you were a collegiate
Correct.
boxer.
So
you were more competitive. Ava
precisely.
Ava
Precisely.
I
doesn't
just
want
want to have fun.
Ava wants to have fun. She
that's
has
part
put
of
a
it.
stop of, I'm not having anybody touch my face.
Yeah. There are limits.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And that's another great aspect of being able to use boxing for different reasons, for sport, for confidence, for self-defense.
Yeah.
However you want to use boxing in your life, there's a way to use it. There's a lot of aspects to it.
So how did you get started?
Absolutely. So I went to a small school in Atlanta called Georgia State University. I initially went to the University of Alabama, Roll Tide.
Oh my God,
did,
Betsy, our super fan.
The best
Oh,
football
Bama.
team in the
Second
country.
week in a show, we've got
Look
a
at
Bama.
that.
I know, I gotta tell you.
I'm,
Yes,
I'm,
yes,
I'm a
yes.
Clemson fan. So.
Oh, I gotta leave. No, not my family is initially from Alabama. My mom grew up in Atmore, Alabama, which is near the state line of Florida. So at a young age, we moved to Atlanta. So I grew up, most of my upbringing was in Atlanta. But I always had a connection with my family, being in Alabama to the Tide and all my uncles always being just crazy
RTR.
Alabama fans.
Yeah.
Yes. So growing up, it was ingrained in me early on that, if I could get into Alabama, I would definitely go to Alabama. And I did. But it's also tough. And kind of to piggyback on what you were saying about kids being able to profit off of all this money at such a young age, off their likeness. That was a challenge for me too. You go to college and like everybody wants to give you a credit card, and it's like you sign up. It's like you walk on campus and it's like, hey, sign up for this credit card. You get a credit card, and the next thing you know, you're like
you're in trouble.
in debt.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting to see how that kind of rolls out with kids and being able to make money, and now they have to get an accountant
and be responsible with that money.
And reach out to guys like you on how to manage this money and think about the next steps after. Right?
Sure.
But yeah, so I went to Alabama initially. Did not like it. Just being away from my family, it was a very different dynamic than which I grew up in. It's really different from Atlanta, to put it, just to put it short. And then I came back home. I went to Georgia State University. Once I got there, took a boxing class just for fun. Ran into a really dynamic coach. His name was Randy Pogue. He's from Philadelphia, and a lot of what I do now is what he did for me, which was inspire, motivate, give me confidence. He definitely ingrained a lot of me that I really like this and I could be good at this, right?
Sure.
So there was a boxing club there. He invited me to come out to a boxing club. I was in the club. Next thing you know, 3 years later, I just was stuck with it.
I just want to know though, like you never boxed before. It sounds like you stumbled into it. How did you make that like? And maybe in college maybe it's like the Olympics where it's a little bit different in terms of the rules and how much you can hit and all of that and the gear that you're wearing. But how did you make the decision that it was okay for you to kind of walk in the ring knowing that you were most likely gonna get hit?
We grew up in a different generation, okay? I have to tell you that. I was playing football at 5, running around like with shoulder pads, helmet. Yeah. So I've never been averse to physicality. So just being hit or hitting somebody just never was something. I was just breaking bones. No,
but that's
it was just always a rough. I've always been aggressive and rough, and like it was just never like scared to mix it up physically. But now I have kids now I train. It's like flag football till in high school, and I'm like, it's just a different era of just. There's more conscious and there's more conversation about head trauma and how we manage these things, which I understand. But I think for me it was good because it didn't
bother you.
No,
I love that answer. I think it's so honest. I mean, it is honest, but I think when you don't. I don't want to say it's a girl thing because I know a lot of women who have no problem boxing, and doing playing football, like getting. It's not a male or female thing. I think it's an internal personal mindset. You either have it or you don't. And so I think it's really interesting. I just want to, before you go on, Craig of WOLA, who has been our Craig Judah, who's been in our studio with us, asked Sed about the ATL. So I'm going to ask you really fast.
Oh, the ATL. Yes. Oh, man.
Is it now a good time, or should we wait? Because I don't know what it is.
Well, it's a perfect time. CJ, I don't think he cares about time, but now's a perfect time because it brings me back to my college days, which were primarily in Atlanta. And then growing up in Atlanta, it's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of culture. Some more of a melting pot. It's kind of like LA in a little way, smaller LA. And then there's that southern kind of vibe. And as you say, having family in Houston, it's just a different mentality of just feeling like everybody's family in a way. For me, it's just when I got here, people don't really acknowledge you, whereas kind of back home, it's like you speak to everybody. You have family down the street that you go and see. It's just more of a familial situation, whereas I moved out here and it's kind of like everybody's running in 600 different ways.
Sure.
Got so many different things and aspirations going on, which is great about this town. There's a lot of people trying to do great things. But yeah, I love it. I tell everybody, if I could make the money I make here and live there, I would. And that's where my family is. And
how long
just
have you
some
been out
really
here in
genuine
LA?
people. This is year 4 now.
Okay.
So yeah, this is year 4.
Yeah.
And it just really, it's a challenge just kind of creating those relationships, meeting those people that I had in Atlanta. But
Oh, so he was just asking you about he just wanted to know about the city.
Oh, yeah, well, the city's perfect.
I thought there was like
the city's
some
great.
great story. I was like,
if
okay.
you like seasons, which I love.
I love being in
it's a great
Atlanta.
city.
Yes,
Yeah.
if you like seasons, great food, a lot of culture.
Yep.
I would like to stress that we have seasons here in LA.
No, we don't.
Debatable.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
We don't have your seasons
There
here
you
in
go.
LA, but
There's
no,
like a
we don't.
fall,
we're on
like a
fire.
real
Okay, that's our season. We're on fire. It's
It was
fire.
like in October. Like, why am I wearing shorts in October?
know.
It's like you're sweating.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It won't happen.
I
in
love
Atlanta.
LA. It's the best city in the world.
That's good. I can tell.
Not disputing, but don't sit there and pretend we have seasons. Okay, moving
have
on.
them.
Anyhow, so what I'd like to start with is kind of the more general discussion.
Okay.
Because I think that of all the comments received on all of our social media platforms, I think bar none, everybody commented that from a physical fitness aspect, boxing is awesome.
It's great. Yeah.
So I don't think anybody's disputing boxing as a discipline or boxing. And I do want to talk about that because I had a boxing experience that like was very interesting. So I do want to talk about that. But what I want to talk about first is the idea that boxing is a sport that may not be the most brutal of sports, but certainly there is a level of it where you look at it and you go, like, it's hard for me to watch professional boxing because even though I can appreciate the talent that it takes to get to that point,
Yes.
I just, it's hard for me to watch.
Sure.
So this week we went to our friends out on social media and we asked the question, boxing, sports or brutality? And I wanted to read some of the responses that we got because I think it was very extreme. I won't read like in detail everything, but
I can't wait.
Catchphrases. Give us catchphrases.
So one friend said it's terrible. It's a terrible barbaric sport. So is dogfighting. Humans.
Wow. That was that. Well,
like-
I did not equate
Go ahead.
Humans will do anything for money. It's brutal and barbaric. And then I just want to quickly go on. She said that in another text that it feels like it's an awesome example of basic human barbarism, refined and justified to make a buck. Boxing is capitalism. So how do you respond to that? Because that I was a little floored. I would love to hear it. Like, I don't have to do all the talking. You guys have at it.
Yeah. Sports, period. People are making money.
Right.
And it's not the only industry where people are making money. Capitalism is alive and well all around the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say people are getting as injured in the NFL
There you go.
or other sports than when it comes to boxing. I mean, it is just, you see the punches more in boxing, obviously, but
Oh, that's an interesting point.
every NFL game,
Yeah.
there's someone getting sidelined.
Well, that's another comment I want to save, so I want to come
Okay.
back to that. But like, just straight out, this is somebody who obviously very passionate. Like, it's barbaric.
Yeah, well.
Do you feel like it's barbaric because you see the punches, or as a boxer, did you feel like that you were in a barbaric sport?
I did not know. That's the furthest from what I thought. I mean, you got to understand, these people are trained multiple hours, multiple days, years of training on how to defend themselves, and then, again, how to stop a threat. So when you think of it as there's a threat, there's two people in combat, they're competing against one another, it doesn't, it takes away that stigma of being barbaric. Because, again, there's a lot of science and there's a lot of art that happens. You only have two hands. This is not UFC or any other type of martial art where you can use knees, elbows, different things. You have two hands. It's just two opponents in combat with two hands. And that's the beauty of it, is that you have to figure out a way to neutralize your opponent just using your two hands. And that's the beauty of the sport.
It's so interesting.
You know, and if you look at it, it's just like, it's not like they're telling you, all right, you got to put your hands down and let me bang you in your head for 9 rounds. These people, women or men, they're both competing and trying to gain a competitive advantage on one another in this fight. And to be fair, I think more of the fight is more so about fatigue. And there's a mental competitive. If you see someone like, for instance, Floyd Mayweather,
Who's
who
made
has taken,
an entire career on just not getting hit.
there you have it. And then there's somebody who's gone into the ring, fought until he's 50 years old. It's taken very little to no punishment whatsoever on his body, on his head, still has all his faculties. And this was someone that understood the beauty of the sweet science. Like, this is somebody that understood, how can I neutralize my opponents, not take punishment, and figured out that this is more of a mental game than it is a physical game. From a boxing fan standpoint, that's what you appreciate more than knockouts and seeing like some guy come out.
Is it really?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
You look at it and you break down the film and you say, man, you see how he was able to slip a punch here and was able to move his head, how he was able to utilize footwork to get out of this situation. I mean, even grappling, like when you clamp and grappling, how do you rebound from a situation? Say you get hit in the body and now you're hurt here. How do you rebound? The mental toughness, the championship medal of coming back from adversity. Similar to what you were saying about the Astros, who were down 2-0.
Yeah.
They were, for a metaphorical sense, laying on the canvas.
Yeah.
They were hurt. So how do you get back up from that and continue to fight? And that's a beautiful thing.
So I love that point. I really do. You might have edged me over on this a little bit because I mean, I truly, I want to understand it more. I don't, again.
Well, and it's not for everyone, but again, to your point, that those who are fans and can sit and watch, they are focusing on that. It's not just stand there and wait for someone to beat them to a bloody pulp. They want to see all of that.
Okay, but I do want to say, because it kind of went, when you said that, I was like, come on.
Yeah.
Well, no, because look at the spectacle. Now, I understand, I've been around the entertainment business my whole life. I understand the entertainment of the match.
Yes.
But I got to tell you, from my limited perspective, a lot of times the fans, like, I feel like the fans get disappointed if there isn't more hitting and blood. And so I can't buy, and maybe I'm wrong, I can't buy that most fans are looking for the subtleties of what you're seeing or what you know. For me, they're out there like, God,
but the question isn't, then is boxing a brutal sport? The question is, what do sports fans want? That's a whole different story. Now, the sport itself is beautiful science.
Yes.
What you want to come and see, having bought your ticket, is on you.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, you can see blood in any sport.
Yeah, but what I want to see, because I'm buying tickets, and the only way anybody makes money in the sport, obviously, is if people are buying tickets.
Sure.
So behind that, is there a push in the professional world to take more punches, be more bloody? I honestly don't know. Like, is there a push to do that because that's what people really want to see? Or do they really? Interesting, I just want to say on a side, a couple of the comments that we got back unprompted when people were saying, I'm not sure I love the sport, blah, 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 is that, but I loved watching Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
No, seriously. No, it's really interesting.
Sure.
Yes.
And again, that's what I'm asking. Is there just not enough Muhammad Alis or Mayweathers that are like very technically sound and beautiful? And that's why you get this kind of like the feeling that my friend had, that it's like a dogfight.
There we go back to
that's such a hard analogy.
It is.
It's not even a proper analogy.
Yeah, it's such a hard.
Okay, but we'll go.
I got it.
It's a great comment. No, thank you for whoever said that, because we've never thought of it in that way. Yeah. When you mention Muhammad Ali, you got to understand is a very great entertainer outside the ring. I think a lot about Muhammad Ali is not about what he was able to accomplish in the ring. It's more so about who he was outside the ring. I mean, he was very flamboyant, very boisterous, had a great personality, and it was really the height of boxing at this time because of him, and heavyweight boxing was very big at the time. Ali is a one of one. There's not many people that have that type of engaging personality and spirit, and is able to galvanize people in that way. To say there's not that many now, I just think the level of other sports now have tended to kind of dim the light of boxing, because you have like LeBron James, and it's hard to compete with guys like Steph Curry and your Tom Brady's, and like these people are you could go anywhere in the country, in the world, and say Tom Brady,
Yeah.
and people will know.
Well,
So the
but I would
mega
argue-
stars are kind of in different sports now. Ronaldo, these guys that are in different sports are just
But listen,
different.
boxing's not hurting, and
No,
you
no,
do
not at
have
all.
megastars, and you do have people that are, matches all over the world, and people lining up. So, I mean, the purses of some of the biggest fights, if I'm not wrong, are like in
they're
the
incredible.
$40 million, $50 million. I mean, it's not like it's
Yeah.
chump change or
No,
anything.
no, it's not at all.
So clearly there is a substantial fan base.
Right.
My question is that fan base driving the brutalness of the sport more than the finesse of the sport because of what they want to see?
Yeah, I don't think, I don't think you can say that it isn't. I mean, I think anytime you've got, fans to engage, entertainment to provide, you're going to be mindful of that. But there have been plenty of fights that get called because at the end of the day, the athlete matters,
Yes.
So fights get called and the trainer says, I'm sorry, you're done. This is just not going to go another round,
Right. Okay. All right. So the next comment, let's move on because this one was equally as kind of like, whoa.
Oh, is this,
I love
one's-
this.
Is this the one? It gets better than
conversation.
dogfighting.
Oh, thank goodness.
Wait till you hear this one.
All right, let's play it
And
on.
it was interesting because the comment really struck me because I went to the same place, even in my own thought process about the kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Comparing football and boxing. One of our comments from our fans said, it's both. Like football, it's a balletic, graceful form of legalized manslaughter.
I told you it'll get better than dogfighting.
Wow. Well,
Work
this
with
is
that.
great. Well, that was, hey, well, there you go. Legalized manslaughter.
And I was like,
This is great. I love these comments.
isn't it
You
amazing?
should talk about, it should become a boxing podcast. That's great.
Let me tell you something. I love the comments because,
Yeah.
again, I personally feel torn about the sport.
Yeah.
So I went on to, in my comments, because I was literally like,
Floored.
first of all, I was floored. Well, floored that she thought boxing was that,
Right.
but more floored that she thought football was that.
Yeah.
So I went on to query her. I was like, tell me about this. Like, I can kind of see it with boxing, but I can't see it with football. And how are you drawing the comparisons? And her comments back had to do with the fact that, football is one of the most brutal team sports. Like, it's boxing in a team setting. That's
More or
number
less.
one.
Okay.
And that too, it's actually might even be more so because you're like in the boxing ring, at least it's just one-on-one,
Right,
and you know where the hand is coming from, so to speak. Whereas in football, you might be out there
Blindsided.
Yeah.
and you have, so it's even like she was even saying that football's worth. So I would love to hear your comments. And do you believe that it's a form of legalized manslaughter?
I don't like the blindsided hits. That's whenever I see one of those, that's the worst thing ever. And there's no avoiding it if someone's got a mark on you or something like that, and teams have been penalized. It's just horrible. But manslaughter is just these people.
Well,
That is-
there are cheap shots
the
taken
word.
on the basketball court.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
there's-
true.
In
That is true.
any sport, in
Yeah.
life. I mean,
Yeah, it
you
is
walk
true.
around and people take cheap shots at you all the time.
is
It's,
true.
but to take it to legalized manslaughter, that's all,
Yeah, that's just people's comments online.
I mean,
But what
That is
happens? No,
incredible.
but what happens if somebody maybe in football you don't see it like you were saying, like it's right in front of you. People have died in the ring, yeah,
yes. Yeah.
and nobody gets thrown in jail because of it, right?
No,
Right.
no, it's competition. Not so much.
Sorry,
not so
I'm
much in
not
football.
trying to support it. I'm just
Well,
saying, like, I see where
well,
it came from.
Because we're making very large jumps. These are willing participants. Yes, these people they're signing up to say, I'm very good at what I do. I want to compete against other people that are very good at what they do. And I feel like I'm capable of performing at a high level against these people. Yes. So with that being said, I don't think that's the case just for this example in legalized manslaughter. I think there's one person
there's a
that's-
sport with rules.
Yes. They're right,
And even
right,
within those
operating-
rules,
correct.
Human
They can
nature
be-
is that we will
Yes.
step outside of those boundaries
Correct.
every once in a while, and dangerous things will happen.
Right.
Greg
Yeah.
Louganis hit his head on a concrete diving platform.
Yes, he did.
Is diving now a brutal sport?
Well, apparently, as another participant in the conversation commented, that patty cakes in school has now been banned because somebody got their eye poked out.
Yes.
Oh,
See, now,
welcome to
you see where we've taken things. That's all we have to say.
Exactly.
Exactly.
My coach was like, scrape it off, son. Get back in there and let's go play. It's
Yeah.
just different times.
Different
It's
times.
different times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it did not to sort of negate her comment, because she did mention that it was a beautiful, sweet martial art.
Oh, you saw her cut. You saw her.
Yeah,
cut.
yeah. So
No,
there
she
was
loves
some
it, but she
aspects of
no,
it
but
that
she
I
really likes it,
understand.
and she loves
Yeah.
football.
Yeah.
It was very interesting that her first salvo was so like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this.
Yeah.
But it was
very
thought provoking.
interesting. Yes,
So
yes.
appreciate it, Claudia.
Yeah,
Thank you
agreed.
so much
Yeah.
for that.
Thanks, Claudia.
Now, on the other side of it, we had a lot of people talk about, again, the positives, and I found out that a lot of my friends actually have people in their lives and world that are into boxing, which I
Yes.
had no idea. So that was fascinating. But one of the videos that a friend sent me, her brother owns a gym in Nottingham, England.
Oh, nice.
And he's a strategist, like a business strategist by nature, but he also has practiced both martial arts and then moved to boxing
Very nice.
and became a trainer and opened this gym. And so there was an interview done with him where he talks about the fact that why he loves boxing so much is because it combines the mental processes, the physical processes, the
Yes.
emotional processes. And what he went on to posit was the fact that when you watch a boxer or you watch anybody who's training in boxing, you are seeing an absolute reflection, a physical external reflection of their internal process, so that you
Agreed.
can
That's
tell.
well said. Yes.
So I would
That is
love
true.
to hear you now are training people from all levels
Yes.
of capabilities and abilities, and can you expound on that?
That
Because-
I mean, that was beautifully put. I mean, that's exactly the way I try to train my clients. Is that there's a lot happening mentally more so than it is physically. You want them to always be, and I think, like you said, more so as a representation of life. You always want them to be alert and awake and aware and understand there's a lot of things going on. When I have my mitts on and I'm holding mitts for somebody, there's a lot happening in like a second. Like, I'll tell them to do something, I expect it to happen right then, right? So now they're forced to react and to think and to be focused in this one moment. I always tell my clients, if you think about anything outside the door now, we got to focus, otherwise we're going to catch a mitt to the face. CJ, for one, shout out to CJ, has caught a mitt to the face a few times. Craig, love you,
But
Craig.
he gets for not focusing.
That's right.
what's on
Be
his
in the
mind?
moment.
That's right.
Craig, we're
And
gonna have to
wanna
have you
be-
back on
Yes.
to find out
He
what's
will
going
tell
on.
He
you.
was focused on the
And he
ATL.
loves it.
Yeah.
Yes, he loves it. He's like, yeah, hit me, man. I gotta get it.
Yeah.
Oh, hit me. And I'm like, Craig, no. The idea is not to get hit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I always tell people, if you're not thinking, you're not alive. You need to be constantly thinking and trying to figure out what's going to happen next, right? Let's always be one step ahead. Like, you cannot be behind. You cannot be thinking about anything else. What happens right now, that's what you focus on. And as you mentioned, it's a great internal look at how somebody thinks.
Well,
right?
what he does at his gym is he brings, but he kind of marries the two. So sometimes he'll bring his business clients and have like teams come into the gym, and he was talking about how he can assess like that person as an employee, what your challenges are going to be just by watching how they
Oh, yeah.
engage
Sure.
in the boxing ring
Yeah.
and how they train and all that. And it rang true to me because I was going to say the one time that I had, which intrigued the hell out of me, by the way. I never thought I would ever want to box, even as a physical, like training activity. I've always been a runner, and that's kind of like, that's what I do.
Nice.
And I had this opportunity. Ayra was there, and it was pretty funny because I know the level of quality of her boxing. And I was like, really? You want me to get in the ring? And they're like, yeah. And I put the gloves on. And
Just doing that transformed her.
totally.
yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh,
I
yeah.
became I was like, oh my gosh, I've now like transported and I am a
That's
lion.
beautiful.
I am
Yes.
a lion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't mess with me, right?
Right, yes.
That was the first thing. But the other thing that I really was surprised at, again, was the amount of minutia, the coordination of minutia that you have to do. Like,
Yes.
I was saying, okay, like hit. He was doing the glove work, and I was like this, and he's like, yeah, but when you're doing one hand, you got to be protecting you got to protect your face.
That's right.
And I kept dropping my hands. He's like, pick your hands up. And I'm like, I didn't even realize I dropped my hands.
Right.
Like I had no awareness of my body.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
I didn't know what my feet. He kept going, shuffle, do something with your feet. And I'm like, aren't I doing something with my feet? He's like, no, you're actually standing still,
Right,
which I didn't realize.
Absolutely. So it just makes you more body aware. It just makes you more aware of everything. And that's the beautiful thing about it. Like I said, it's not so much about what happens between the trainer and the person. It's more about what happens with the person and on the inside, and just thinking and being body aware and being mentally aware of what's happening in that moment. It's a beautiful thing. That's why I gravitated toward it, and that's why I love working with people, because again, you get like the men that you mentioned
Right, in England,
you get to see how people change and or react to certain situations.
Or
That's a
that their
beautiful thing.
inner selves actually come out.
Yes.
That's what I felt like when I put the gloves on. It was like,
Yeah, you're ready for combat. You were like, I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to get my ass kicked, but I'd be ready for it
Yeah.
because I have the gloves on.
There you go. Yeah.
And training in boxing starts to transform how you do everything else.
Agreed.
How you conduct
Agreed.
yourself in business. You learn to do things differently. You learn to not show your cards all at the same time, and how that looks when you're in the ring.
Yes.
Why are you jabbing, sort of to get a sense what the opponent's going to do. Wait for them to reveal their cards to you before you take an action. And that starts to shift how you conduct business, how you deal in relationships with other people. You start to really be very mindful and not calculated in a bad way, but just very aware of the energy that's being exchanged.
Right, there you go. It's beautiful. Yeah,
It's so
great.
interesting.
I agree.
But it seems like it's such a physical sport. How do you teach that kind of like? It was so fast. Like when I was in the ring, it was like everything was moving really fast. And you're talking about how like you have time to actually contemplate what you're doing.
Oh, but it starts to become part of your process, and you have your trainer saying to you, slow down, slow. It's not about going fast and going all out and giving it all, and then you're exhausted before the round's even done.
Absolutely. Pacing.
Right. Not at all. Total pacing. You're very calculated.
Yeah, it's also really interesting too because rounds are typically 3 minutes. That's seems very short.
Yeah.
But
when you're in there,
it is not.
It's a long time.
It seems like an eternity. It does.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
Especially when you're sparring and like you don't have, like, there's no trainer.
That's
so now
when you see the real big difference.
Yes. Now there's
because
a
your
person.
mind's now involved.
Correct.
When you're doing mitt work and your trainer's
Yes.
telling you blah, 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 one thing.
Yes.
When he now says get in the ring and you're just sparring, total different world.
I think I'd be
Absolutely.
terrified.
That's
Total
part
different
of
world.
it. Absolutely. And that's part of it.
Yeah.
And then once you can become not terrified
Yeah.
and understand, like, okay, there's a peace and calmness to this and how I want to approach this, which again is perfect, what you said about business and life. It's just not being antsy and just going in there and understanding, trust my training, what I've been taught to do. Then it becomes more of a mental, tactical approach.
And going with your gut.
Yes.
You learn
absolutely.
to follow your intuition so
Absolutely.
much better than you
Agreed.
do in lots of other
So do you
sports.
do these types of like what my friend's brother does, like team building or like bringing people into your training world in order to
Yes.
help them like fine tune some of these skills? Because that's what's fascinating to me about all the research that I've done about it.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's a few companies I've worked with before who've had their employees come train with me. And, it's just, you wouldn't think this, but to be exhausted next to some of your, like, comrades or some of the people you work with every day, and just seeing how they work out and just being able to laugh and kind of that I'm dying face.
Yeah.
It's kind of a...
Right.
I love that.
people
I've had
kind
that face on many times. Like, oh
people
my God.
tend to come together and they're like, I'm dying too, but you know what? We're going to do this together.
Together.
You know what I'm saying?
Or to
And-
watch those and you're like, yeah, I knew you were the one taking the cheap shots. You learn a lot
It's
about
really
people.
yes, you learn a lot about people. And you're like,
Yeah.
you know, and
keep
there's
an eye
some
on
people
you.
that, they're like tough around the office, and then you get them on the mist, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. So, like I said, it's just a good way to learn who people are.
That's so great.
Once they're in this arena, this space.
Well, but I love the idea that boxing as a practice, like Ava was saying, you're taking physical skill sets and you're translating it into gut, honing your gut. emotional muscles. You
Yes.
can work out the kind of the mental, emotional
Yeah.
muscles as well as your physical muscles. You know,
Absolutely.
and that it's. I mean, I guess I always realized it was a very strategic sport,
Yes.
obviously,
Yeah.
but I didn't realize that it was that. Finessed, I guess, is the best word I can think of.
Absolutely.
It is
Sweet
so
science.
finessed.
Was that
So
a good
finessed.
word? You
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that word? Does that make you happy?
We've got just
Yes.
minutes left, but I
Okay.
don't want to miss opportunity to talk about you working with kids and whether or not boxing is something kids should be learning, and if so, at what age and why, and how do you?
Yes. It's one of my passions,
Yeah.
honestly, is just working with kids at the very smallest level. I'd say the youngest person I've worked with is probably 5 or 6.
Wow.
And and I think kids love it, obviously. Like you mentioned,
Yeah.
once they put the gloves on, it's like, where are they at? Let me at them, right?
Yeah.
And it just teaches kids the same principle, which is, and kids can be very sporadic and everywhere. It just teaches kids to be focused in this one moment and to learn a skill and just to be invested and to give them that fitness component, because in a lot of spaces now, especially in schools, they're trying to reduce like physical education. You see PE going away, and
Which is a crime.
yeah,
Oh, by
yeah.
the way, that we should all be up in arms at.
It really is. And you just start to see, and even back to my earlier point was where you see kids like not being physical in football, or like we're taking that away. I think kids appreciate that kind of like, oh, this is like a physicality, like physical sport, and
Well, the other
being in that space.
The other interesting thing is that it's a very natural thing as a parent to put your kid in, say, karate, which both of us have
that's
done.
what my parents put
And
me in
nobody
karate.
really thinks, hey, let's put maybe because there isn't enough like kids boxing places around. Like I wouldn't, because I'm thinking about
And
my own son, and I'm going, that
parents
could be
struggle
cool.
with it. Parents struggle with it. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had that conversation. I take my kids boxing. They've been boxing for, they're young, but they've been boxing. And I have a conversation with parents, but you're teaching them to be brutal. You're teaching them to be aggressive. You're teaching them to, that's not at all what they walk away learning.
Right.
Well,
And when they're out of the ring, they don't want to be walking around socking their kid. I mean, our boys spend time together all the time.
Yeah.
My son's not wanting to beat up on
Right,
her son just
right.
because he knows how
he knows how to
to
do
move
it.
in the ring.
Well, it's interesting. One of the articles that was sent through the social media was about the fact that in the UK, the Educational Commission is looking at putting boxing into schools because for self-defense purposes, but for all the other beneficial reasons that we've talked about today.
Yeah.
So we have 1 minute to go.
Okay.
Before we sign off on all of our stuff, we want to give you a chance to share with people where they can find you and where your
Absolutely.
classes are. If they're not on if it's a private session, do you have any other place that you go, which we know, but go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously, thank you again, guys, for allowing me to come into you guys' domain and be able to talk about the sport that I love and it's kind of embraced me. And I think this conversation was really
And you're
great.
welcome
So
back
thank you.
anytime. Just so you know.
Well, you guys are great. Thank you so much. Yes, so if you're interested in working with me, you could go to my website, CEDfit, CEDfitla.com, and you can kind of set up a session with me if you wanted to do that. Also train at WOLA. There's a kids boxing class that we offer 2 days a week, Wednesdays and Fridays. And then I also teach the class at Intention Boxing, which is in North Hollywood.
Okay.
That's what we did today. So I'm everywhere. Easy to find. I'm on Instagram as well. I think that's kind of the way people find you now at CEDfitla. And just
You're out there.
You're
You're out there. People can find you.
Easy to find.
Thank you so much for being
Pleasure's
here.
mine.
And as always, we appreciate everybody who tunes in and who downloads our show afterwards. You can find us at thedistilleryinc.com. You can also find it on all the social media platforms at Distill It 360. You can also download and subscribe to us on YouTube, Google Play, iTunes, Castbox, Stitcher, Spotify, and all your favorite podcast platforms. We will be back in 2 weeks. We can hardly wait. Everybody have a safe and happy Halloween. Don't eat too much chocolate. Bye. Thank you,
everyone.
Shai.
Guys,
Thank
thanks
you.
for listening. Thank you, Shai.